Welcome everybody. Hopefully, our random ramblings about Pokopia and Pokemon not being a horror game has caught your interest. I welcome you. We all welcome you. As you know, I'm Rhodehawk. I am the humble host here of the Bulbacast. And I am so excited to actually talk the Pokemon DLC. I know things got delayed with the holidays, and hopefully more of you have been able, those listening, those here have had a more exploration with the DLC. Uh, I honestly have a ton of opinions on the DLC. Not all of them kind, which is surprising because many people know me that I'm kind of a Pokemon apologist from time to time. But with that, I want to introduce our cast, and I'm gonna start with Storm. Can you let everybody know who you are, what you do, and can you also answer our intro question, which is if you had the opportunity to open a shop like Ansha's in the Pokemon world, what would you sell?
Okay, so hi, I'm Storm Aurora. I am a member of the Bulbapedia Leadership Board. Um, so I help manage Bulbapedia. Um, and if I could open a shop like Ancha's in the Pokemon world, I think I would sell Malasadas because well, I should say, I would I would collaborate with Hal to open a Malasada shop.
Love that answer. Um, I am an Alola boy, so I love that. I'm kind of did they like ever hint that Hal opens up his own Malasada shop towards the end of those games?
Um, Not in the games, but I know in Pokemon Adventures he does open a Malasada shop at the end. And if I remember if I remember right, he actually opens a Malasada shop with Guzma, which I think is the funniest thing ever. Um, but yeah, it just
That
feels it feels fitting for him.
uh, that brings me comfort to know. Um, I'm now gonna move over to Abby. Can you remind everybody who you are, Abby, what you do, and then same question. If you could open a shop in the Pokemon world like Ancho, what would you sell?
All right. I am Abby. I am a moderator over on our Discord as well as one of the streamers here on this very channel with Pokemon Unite. And then if I had to pick something to sell, I am going with perhaps the most customizable food and also one of my personal favorites. It's got to be mac and cheese. There's so many variations you can put on it. I'm a strong believer in it as a canvas for other flavors. And so that would be my pick.
So I have to ask, would you have the obligatory fairy type with you?
Um, maybe I feel like you have to have some sort of mascot if you're doing a shop like this.
And then I'm gonna pass it to GD. Same question, who are you, what you do, and what would your shop be?
Well, hello, I'm Ghost Diplocaulus, or GD for short. I'm a firm super moderator at Bulbagarden, and if I opened a shop, what would I sell? I think I would sell Pokemon dolls, honestly. Just for the fun of it, and most of them would just be substitute dolls of different sizes. But I'd have like the occasional doll of a different type of Pokemon. Like the Horn games mention a high skitty line, and that sounds like a fun thing to sell. Like, would have been interesting to see.
I like it. And then Hilbert, can you let everybody know who you are, what you do, and what shop would you open?
Hello, everyone. My name is Hilbert. I'm a junior admin on Bulbapedia, helping with game content mostly. And I think the kind of shop that I would set up, I'm kind of taking a note out of Caps's book about drinks. I would kind of do like smoothies. That's kind of like my personal favorite thing. I think it would be cool to like mix up a whole bunch of berries and like sell smoothies to people in the Pokemon universe.
I love that. And then Hilbert, I have a question for you. Now this is fairly stereotyping berries in Pokemon, but would you have a Cherubi or a Cherum with you or something else?
Oh, definitely. I think that's how you get people to go to your stall, is you have someone, you'll have a Pokemon there that'll draw them in, and what better Pokemon than a Cherubi?
I have to say, I forgot to answer this, but now based on everybody's answers, um, I would probably say I would open a bakery. I do love to bake, and I'm gonna go full stereotypical baker in Pokemon, and I'm absolutely gonna have a Doc Spun. I love that little goofy goober, and I feel like Doxbun deserves more love. Granted, if you watch the Pokemon Horizons anime, there was a quote unquote new form of Lycanroc that was revealed. I don't know if the episode has aired, but the internet has dubbed him Fat Lycanroc form, and I would love to have a chubby Lycanroc just hanging out with me at a bakery. If you haven't seen the pictures yet, it is one of the most adorable things I've seen in a while. I highly recommend checking it out. Um, and as we go into things, I am incredibly excited to have this conversation because we went, as stated so many times, and people saw this, we had a very lengthy base game discussion. And as we go, I think one of the really important things to highlight is the gameplay loop. Like, this DLC was, in my opinion, vastly different than previous Pokemon DLC, which it's good to see them jumping into that and branching out. But I actually have this question for Storm, and after Storm answers, please, anybody feel free to jump in. But did you actually enjoy the game loop in this DLC, Storm? And do you feel that the missions were with time distortions were interesting and meaningful?
Yeah. I actually, this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I actually do generally enjoy the gameplay loop. Um, it's like especially the missions within the distortions reminded me a lot of the missions from Legends Arceus. How you had to catch certain numbers of Pokemon and you know, do all those sort of things for the tasks for Pokedex completion. And that was something that I really enjoyed doing in that game and something that I felt that the base game lacked. So I did find the missions to be a good addition, and I enjoy, and I do kind of enjoy the challenge of trying to complete all the missions before time runs out kind of thing. But at the same time, the time limit can be a little frustrating sometimes, especially in battle zones. Um, that like the um the fact that that you can get sucked into a battle like whenever, and there's not any there's very little places for you to find cover, and like I just want to break pokeballs and collect berries, and I keep getting dragged into these battles, and it can get frustrating and it really eats up your time. So and then there's the fact that you don't even gain experience from these battles, so it's the battle zones feel kind of pointless, um, unless you're actually, if unless you're just trying to gain points. So, so yeah, it's like I can kind of, it's a little frustrating, that aspect of it, but so maybe I don't enjoy the gameplay loop as much as I thought I did, um, because it also gets frustrating trying to reset for the hyperspace, for the the different, try to reset the distortions to find the species that you want, and um and all of that, and it's I like the missions. That's about it.
Storm, I think I want to jump off of your sentiments there about the hyperspace missions. Um, I did find a lot of them kind of frustrating in their own regard. Um, when you were talking about the hyperspace battle zones and getting sucked into battles that you didn't want to get into, and all the stress about like losing time in battles, and it does feel like very overwhelming to do that for seemingly little um, reward, with it just being hyperspace points or items if you want to attempt the very strong trainers in there. But then on the other hand, your other option is like going into wild zones, which some of the missions there are also pretty frustrating in their own respect, because you don't know what you're going to get when you enter them, and you might end up with missions that you really don't like very well in a certain environment, and it just gets it's one big gamble, and sometimes the payoff isn't as good as the effort you put into it, I guess. So it is a lot to consider, and it can be kind of tiring at times.
Yeah, and just to jump off of that, I think the challenge. So I mean, my big thing is I do not play games that have time trials. I'm not a fan of feeling rushed in anything, let alone Pokemon. And I think if they had gotten rid of that or altered it one way or another, maybe having like extra time or not having to hunt for berries to get better berries and then make donuts with very little explanation on how to make donuts better. Which I mean, the Pokemon fan base did an amazing job of jumping online and being like, "Hey, this is how you make a good berry. This is how you do this," which is the heart of the Pokemon fan base. But I think when I started getting into more difficult combat, that was very upsetting. Which we said the word difficult a couple times, so that very infamous Mega Crabrawler double battle that you had to be in, my goodness, I don't think I ever returned to that. And it was infamous for a long time on how hard that was. But that with a time limit was not fun for me at all. I do think there is value to that, like a system like that. I just don't think Pokemon is the place for that. If that makes sense to anybody.
Yeah, because I think the Crabrawler one in particular is tough because it's like one of the first distortions that you have access to, so you're not going to have a lot of hyperspace berries yet, so you're not going to be able to make good donuts, so you're not going to have a long time limit, so your Pokemon are too weak, and or you run out of time, and it just gets frustrating.
I think
But
that
I like Cap's suggestion in chat that that the battle zones would be more worth it if you were guaranteed to get like a berry per each time you win a battle. Because one of the things that I discovered about the 5-star hyperspace battle zones that actually makes them kind of worth it is that sometimes you can get rare Pokeballs from defeating certain trainer classes. So like I think collectors can give you like really rare stuff like safari balls and sport balls. And I think rich kids can sometimes give you like apricorn balls. Like and yeah, this is probably like the first time since Heart Gold Soul Silver that apricorn balls are readily accessible enough to be worth that it's actually worth using them. Um, in my opinion, which is very nice. And yeah, that's really nice, and it's unfortunate that that's only that it's only certain trainers that give you items after battle. So it would be nicer if everybody gave you an item after battle.
And I completely agree. As I said in our pre-show, I am a very I'm a big fan of simple Pokemon, but I think there's value to the discussion of a challenge. Um, and breaking into this, because I think this is a perfect segue, which is the identity of how hard it can be to make berries, and make donuts, especially with the berries. But I I think it's a unique challenge, and I think it also exemplifies some evolution of Pokemon. But I was just wondering, Abby, do you have any opinions on the process of making donuts or kind of the evolution of what it costs to make donuts?
Yeah, the donut system as a whole is probably the single thing that bothers me the most about this DLC. I get what they were going for. It kind of feels like an evolution of sort of the curries in Sword and Shield, and especially the sandwiches in Scarlet and Violet, but it just does it in a way that is much less interesting because you're required to have the donuts to do anything in hyperspace, but then you can only get the berries to make the good donuts by doing well in hyperspace, which means if you, for whatever reason, like, I'm going back especially to like that Mega Crabominable fight, like that was really the like kind of big thing for me. Like you spend all these berries on making a really good donut to go in, do this thing, and especially with the side missions, all of a sudden you lose it, or in the post game, the like Rogue Mega refights or anything like that, and you're just out those berries, and you have no way to get them back, and it's really difficult to get them back, and then I'm sure we'll get into this later, but then there's also the whole thing of like the legendary donuts and needing the specific flavor scores for that, which again just increases the grind and needing these berries and the cycle of berries, all of that. And it just gets so exhausting by the end of it. I really think like it works for a while in the main campaign, like up to credits, and then it just really overstays its welcome and gets especially noticeably bad in the post game for me.
Well, and I think there is a lot of value to that, especially with that grind. Like, Pokemon has largely moved away from intense grinds for a long time. And oh my gosh, the trying to get everything just to get to the final end of the post game is ridiculous. Um, so Definitely appreciate that. But as I do also want to go to Hilbert, just really quickly, since I accidentally jumped in preemptively.
Yeah, the nut system, I do agree. In the beginning, it was a little bit charming, I guess, to try and like make all these different combinations of berries to make all these different donuts, and it seemed like, oh, this is such a cool system. But once you start getting into like the more sophisticated recipes, and once you also realize that a lot of the effects are just completely random. Like you can obviously determine like what types of effects you get, but even then, like if it's a type resistance or a sparkling power, for example, um, you might not get the exact one that you want. Um, and having that lack of control over little things like that, when you could do stuff like that with the sandwiches and Scarlet and Violet, felt like such a unnecessary like removal of a feature. Um, and also using kind of a personal example, like I'm trying to shiny hunt some of the legendaries that you can get in the hyperspace zones, and it's super frustrating to have to like reset to get a certain donut or go back into the grind and get more berries to make more donuts. So it was very, very unfortunate change.
Well, and I think that is another fantastic point, and also moves us into another question, which is really important, and um, that is the Mega Dimension side quests. We've already highlighted some major complaint with the side quests. But as I move into this, I would like to know, GD, just because we haven't heard much from you yet in these questions. I'd like to ask you, do you think that these side quests were a good evolution of the ones already presented in the game at all?
To be to be honest, I think like I think like they are they are like like a step in the right direction, but yeah, it's but but yeah, on the whole, like pretty much everybody that's been said everything that's been said about the problems with them, like they stick out like a lot, like those issues stick out a lot and makes it kind of difficult to enjoy them some a lot of the time. Yeah. um
I
and
think that's very valid and a great point. I just want to open this up to more of a group discussion. Does anyone else have any other strong opinions or feelings on these side quests? I'd love to help you all shine in this conversation.
Yeah, I do have actually thoughts about the side quests. So I know I was like complaining about the side quests. I don't actually have an issue with the side quests themselves. I have an issue with the berry system and how that manifests in the side quests, but I think overall the side quests, the actual content of them is potentially even better than the base game. It's I feel like it was a lot fewer like just show them this Pokemon or do a random battle. It was a lot more of the I also I mean this comes up in a bunch of the side quests. Like I really enjoyed the multi battles that were introduced in this DLC, and there were a lot of those in the side quests. My single favorite side quest in the whole thing was the one where you take over the as like cashier for that one like food stall, like having to do like the calculations based on these orders and getting the numbers right, and just the sort of creativity like that I thought was really interesting. Or like the far-fetched battles were really cool. There was just a lot of really neat creativity on display, and it felt a lot more varied and interesting. Like side quests felt a lot more worth going out of your way for in the DLC compared to the base game. I just think a lot of the ones specifically in the distortion stuff suffered from the overall berry system.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well here. I think Abby brings up a great point in terms of highlighting the creativity that I think the designers had when the developers had when forming some of these. The one that really sticks out to me that I think not only kind of exemplifies that, but also ties in with like the whole narrative around what hyperspace Lumios is the one where you go into hyperspace to get the ring of from the husband who died to then give it to his wife who's living. I think that is a really, really cool thing that they did, and that one really stuck with me. I wanted to highlight that one in particular, as just kind of like not only an example of their creativity in these side quests in the post game, but also how it ties in with the narrative there.
Yeah, I agree that there are a lot of really good side quests in the DLC to the point where I genuinely forgot that some of them were added in the DLC and not part of the base game. Um, like there's that one anyone who's in the Bulbagarden Discord might remember that that there was one time I was asking about what names everybody picked for the side quest where you pick the name of you get to name a street um in the in Magenta sector and and I asked about it in the main channel because I thought that was this was such a clever game. This was just such a natural and clever side quest, and of course it was in the base game. And then that was a DLC side quest, and I'm like, oh, um, and yeah, that was just a really fun one that stuck with me, and it's a little disappointing that the name doesn't actually appear on the map afterwards, but yeah,
Yeah, I
it
was
is
gonna
what it
mention
is.
that too. I really liked that one as well. I liked all the ones that have been brought up, the cashier one as well. But it is a little
And
bit frustrating that the name doesn't show up on the map after you pick it.
and for the record, I named the street Magenta Alley Road.
Another one in the vein of that I just want to highlight is the one down, I believe, where the Rogue Mega Starmie is, the trainer tips sign
Oh yeah,
man
yeah,
was
yeah.
delightful. I love that he like actually like had the hologram in front of him after completing the quest. That was so
Yes,
funny.
that one's silly. And another great one is it's actually a series of side quests where you're helping the writer write his stories by giving him certain Pokemon. And I haven't gone back to that one yet, but I want to and just play around with like using bringing in different Pokemon and seeing what kind of funny or creative situations you can see. You can have the guy say, but depending on what Pokemon you bring. And like I saw one screenshot of somebody who got the guy got who brought a Flygon to to have him say a line something like, Flygon was hoping for a mega evolution, and it was just like, oh yeah, yeah, that's real. And
I want to add one thing here. I didn't get to talk about this in the base game. And this is in the base game, but highlighting the creativity here. I really liked to this day the side quests that you had to do to get the Kalos starters in the base game because I thought it was really creative and I liked how they matched them to each starter individually, which for me the Fennekin one was the tougher one for me, but I think that that's something that this game does really well. I feel like the writing is really solid. I feel like the people who were working on this game truly cared about um, the evolution of these Pokemon and how they could be incorporated. And I liked how they weren't just, oh, show up, say one thing, get Pokemon. And so really quickly, speaking of
And even the
Pokemon,
ones that are sorry, just one more thing. Just even the ones that are just, show up, show me a Pokemon, even some of those are fun. Like the guy who has an Arbok and insists it's a Seviper, until you show him a real Seviper. That one was very silly and reminded me of the old Trader's Choice about saying that Arbok evolves into Seviper. Um so yeah, I there are some really delightful side quests. Anyway, back to you, Road.
oh, absolutely. You actually made me think about the Team Rust one where you have to battle two different Team Rust people and they have an Arbok and I think a Laron and you basically have to decide which of them is better. Um, but getting into Pokemon because I honestly could talk about this game and its side quests all day. I do want to really quickly um, pull into the idea of these limited spaces and how they affect Pokemon because and I'm going to be honest, there were a few times it took me to get I had to try over and over to get a Wimpod because I wanted Glossopod on my team, and the first time I saw it, time ran out. But that moves us into these limited spaces and whether or not these ranging hyperspace maps are actually valuable or they hurt the exploration. And GD, I want to move this to you and ask, do you think these are harmful or helpful to the exploration in in Pokemon?
To be fair, I do kind of have like mixed feelings about this one because like I on one hand I can see the value in a limited space, on a limited space because in the sense that it might have to force a player to get creative or get better with or do better or better timing and stuff. But on the other hand, I kind of just don't think it's well implemented. They're implemented well here. Like I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm like like saying this like properly, but yeah, it's because of the Wimpa thing you said precisely that it just like you like sometimes like I feel like I spend more time there than I really should and kind of get boring fast for me. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about them. Not sure if it's if I explain myself properly, but yeah.
I think that's completely valid. I actually saw several videos of people going to try and find particular Pokemon, and even if they were there, they ran out of time. And additionally, sometimes there weren't even the Pokemon people were looking for. Their blacked out image might have been on the side quest or the portal, and it just wasn't there, um, which is so aggravating. Um, and I definitely also want us to think about.
So
Oh,
sorry, I was going to say like about the part where you can't always find the Pokemon. Like I think maybe it's possible that maybe it's supposed to be like a rotating roster, but I think it would be helpful to add like an indicator of when the Pokemon you actually want shows up somewhere.
I mean, I think that the if the Pokemon appears in the image that it is guaranteed to be in that distortion. It's just that sometimes there's only like a single location in that distortion where the Pokemon can spawn, and so if you run out of time before you can explore the whole thing, then you never end up finding it.
I mean that's very possible. I definitely stressed out trying to
It's again
find
really
Wimpod.
frustrating, and why did they make this time limit thing?
Hmm.
'Cause and the other thing is about the time limit is that I think it works, um, like, it kind of hurts you in the other direction too because it's like, if I end up, completing all the tasks and catching all the Pokemon I want to catch pretty early, and then I still have a lot of time left, then I'm like, well, I don't want to just leave early because it's like I only have a limited time here, so I want to, I want to keep using it, and then, but it's like there's not really anything that I need to do in here right now, so it just kind of so I wind up kind of staying longer than I would really want to, and it just kind of ends up being boring.
Well, and to add to that, I think it's kind of interesting when you're looking for Pokemon because as you get better berries, it becomes a lot easier to find those Pokemon. And like you said, Storm, you get better understanding of the maps, you get more time, it can start to feel boring. And I think that's like, I'm going to be honest. I think it would have been substantially better if they had gifted us some of the or at least more hyperspace berries by the time you went in. That way we didn't have to stress. Because I think the first quest I did was like catch Wimpod. And I was vastly underleveled and it was deeply frustrating. And because of that, because I love Golisopod, and I think there is, I would love to highlight Mega Evolutions, but I want to make sure I'm not cutting anybody off. Is there any other last minute thoughts on the distribution of Pokemon before we do one last question and then check in with the wonderful people watching this stream?
Yes, I have just a couple thoughts about just the way that the distribution of Pokemon and the distortions is handled is that, I am the kind of person who loves completing the Pokedex. Every game that comes out, I am, gonna aiming to not just complete the regional decks, but also create a living Pokedex where, I have one not, I have one of every species in my box. So, I enjoy it. I think it's a fun challenge. And this completing the hyperspace Pokedex was the first time in a long time that I actually kind of started to not have fun completing the Pokedex because because it just started to get frustrating that, it's like I'm missing this one very specific species and there all I can do is just keep, sitting on benches, resetting and hoping for it to show up. Um, and um, and so it took me forever to find a distortion with Feebas in it. And so it was really it just wound up being frustrating because there's nothing you can do to influence what distortions appear. It's just it's just totally random and like in at least in at least in previous games. Well, I mean, Feebas is always a bitch to catch in previous games. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Um, but but it's just it feels different that like at least if I'm going through every checking every single water tile to see if Feebas can spawn there, at least I feel like I am in control. I am that I am there's something specific that I'm doing to influence the chance of finding the Feebas. But it's like if I'm just sitting here on benches, I'm just rolling the dice over and over again, and it's annoying. And all of that is just compounded like tenfold when you get into the post game and you start trying to catch the Pokemon that are exclusive to the special distortions. Oh my gosh, why did they think it was a good idea to force you to grind 25,000 points every time to roll a special distortion, which has a chance of being, one of the legendaries that you need, or, one of the Rotom or the Rotom one, or the Gimmighoul one, or the Frigivax one, and it's like, it's, oh, that was that was the worst part of the whole experience for me, and I doubt they should not have. They should have made that process like way easier somehow. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I will say it took me way too long to get that. And then when I found out, get a Wimpod, when I found out it wasn't guaranteed in the storyline, I was pretty disappointed. Um, really quickly here, especially because Hilbert, I know you haven't gotten to say as much about this. And I'm actually gonna. Caps may have already thrown this out in the chat, but I do want to end us on one particular question, which is a little bit more pessimistic before we take our break, check in with the Twitch chat. And I'm going to change up how I do things. Usually I start with the positive and with the negative. I'm going to start with the negative. And Hilbert, which new mega was your least favorite and why?
Hmm. So this one, I have a much easier time responding as opposed to what my favorite is, because I genuinely thought that they cooked with a lot of the megas introduced. Like, there were very rarely any that I thought were disappointing, but the one whose first impression was not like super impressive to me had to have been Mega Pyroar. And I think it mostly has to do with its design, and I'm not going to generalize and say like if a mega needs a drastic design change from the original to be good, but I feel like compared to its base form, it didn't really contribute anything more to me than what the base Pyroar was trying to achieve, especially with regard to like the symbolism in its main. Seeing how it's based on like kanji for fire, it didn't like strike as anything super different. And I also thought that both males and female Pyroar having the same mega type was a little discombobulating. So that's my opinion on my least favorite.
I mean, I
In
think
similar
that's
vein, it's also a little lame that Meowstick's male and female forms both had the same mega.
I personally I actually like that. Like, it's a very clever like multi-reference, because it's a reference to chimera cats. I personally thought it was really clever. Like, you know how there's sometimes cats that look like they were right split down the middle, and that's because they were like separate embryos that kind of joined together, and that's when you get a chimera cat. And I just think that's like a really clever thing to do for like, I guess I understand like wanting separate designs, and but I just think that the thing they did with Mega Meowstick is so cool that I end up not really minding all that much. But yeah.
Do you have a least favorite GD?
Yeah, and that would be Mega Scovillain. Not because I dislike the design or anything. It's just that Scovillain to me is a Pokemon that like, this is a complaint that I hear a lot for several Mega evolutions. But it was the first time that I felt it really applied, and it's that Scovillain really should have gotten a proper evolution, and now it's never gonna get that chance ever because it has a mega now, and I do feel a bit bummed out about that. Like I feel like that Scovillain's designs had a lot of room to grow, and now it's never gonna get that chance because it's stuck with this temporary power up, and yeah, and yeah, it kind of bumps me out a little.
I will say, just in response to that, I have heard theories about Scovillain getting a convergent form. Um, and I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about like the various kind of peppers. Um, so that could happen. I doubt it will. But I just want to ask, anybody else want to share your least favorite before I do and we move on to the Twitch chat?
I will hop in here. This might be unfair because I don't really like the base form in the first place, but I really am not a fan of Staraptor, Mega Staraptor. I I don't know what it is necessarily. It might just be the like it's trying to look like muscular or something. It's really bizarre to me. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Staraptor in the first place, so like but I was hoping at least the Mega would make me like it a little more, and that did not seem to be the case. And then I also have some issues with Darkrai, but I'll leave those for our story discussion. I will say I will also I'm also going to defend Meowstic. I actually that's one of my favorites from the DLC. I really like how it has the like split coloration. I think it was really a much better designed male female like convergent than Pyroar was. I think it worked really well.
Yeah,
And
honestly, the honestly Mega Pyro doesn't have very much of the female. I do have to say that. Like it generally
Yeah.
kind it really is just male Pyro with even more mane. Like I think female Pyro when she Mega evolves, she just like gets an extra dose of testosterone or something.
Mhm.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to say my least favorite Mega yet, so I'm just gonna say real quick that I think it's probably Heatran. Um, like I'm glad for it that it got a Mega because it's kind of a forgettable mon otherwise, so it needed a little something. But the actual design is just kind of meh. Just
I will say
doesn't stand out to me.
I don't have a problem with it design wise. I have a problem with it like lore wise. Like I still don't understand why it's just like some random like progression like thing, in the same vein as like Tatsugiri or like Meowstic, and then suddenly here's Heatran. Like that really
Yeah,
kind of threw me off.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, Hitran has always been kind of like this really big oddball as far as legendary Pokemon go. Like most legendary Pokemon, get some kind of lore or story justification. And then Hitran just says, "Bam! Here's a Pokemon. It's a legendary. No, we're not going to explain why. It just exists. You have to deal with it." And I've seen people, put forth certain theories, and the one that I personally like the most is that Hedron's supposed to be like a representation of the Earth's core, which is why it's a fire steel type and probably why it looks melted like that. But yeah, I think that the thing with Hedron is more of like an extension of a problem it always had, at least to me.
And just to jump in with time, I'm gonna be honest. I'm looking over all of these megas, and we are absolutely right. They had some amazing designs. So I'm gonna be honest. My least favorite, uh, I'm gonna go with Mega Garchomp Z. I know there are people who love it, and I am gonna be honest, it feels like a downgrade to me. I know they went more with like jet plane dragon thing, and it's not because it loses the ground typing or all of that. It feels less than. And I'm one of those weird people who actually really likes Mega Garchomp's jaw and all of those things. And it could be because I have not used Mega Garchomp Z. I haven't seen much on it. It just feels to me. But I'm sure there's a lot we could get into on that alone. But Caps, I would imagine there's probably some level of discussion going on in the chat, and I'd love to highlight the Twitch chat some.
Oh yeah, I asked earlier what chat's favorite mega was. We got some good answers. Poke Delta had said Mega Glamora, Mega Chimecho, and Mega Absol Z. There was other love for Absol Z as well earlier on, but I personally want to highlight Mega Glamora. I was streaming on Wednesday and ran into it for the first time, and I kind of took a look at some of its like Pokedex entries and the Bulbapedia like resources, and I think it's very thematic for a number of reasons. With like like the little spinny things around it look like little glimmets, and that's like connected to how Glimmet and Glamora interact. I also thought it was really interesting that, something I brought up on that stream was like Glamora to me, outside of Terrapagos, is probably like the Pokemon that's single most connected to terrestrialization for me, because it's only found in Area 0, and it's like found in the depth. Like I first encountered Glimmet and Glamora all the way in the depths of Area 0 with all the crystals and stuff. And so I think it's very interesting that a Pokemon so deeply connected to terrestrialization gets a Mega Form. Maybe there's some lore or theories that can be devised from this that talk about the connection between those two phenomena. So that's one that I saw some love for, that I liked. There was also love for Mega Hawlucha, which I believe was a base game Mega, but also very, very good. In terms of least favorites, we had some Heatrans, we had some Mega Lucario Z, we had Pyroar and Feraligatr, as mentioned earlier by our panel. So a large variety of different ones, but it seems like, they added so many in this game that you can really kind of pick out the ones you like and the ones you don't, and there's such a wide pool to pick from that opinions will be diverse regardless, right?
Yeah, and about Mega Feraligatr, like that, like I have to say that poor thing like got the short end of the stick, because like you know how the official art of all the megas has came out recently, and a lot of megas benefit from it, like because they have these cool dynamic poses that made people start appreciating megas that they didn't like that much before. But Mega Feraligatr isn't one of them. Like it just like its official art just kind of keeps the weird toilet lid hood thing, and I think that's what, and I think that really harms it, like its public perceptions, because the official art does a lot of heavy lifting in a Pokemon's popularity, and more than most people probably realize. But yeah, here's poor Mega Feraligatr not really getting some to do something cool with the theme it was going for.
I will say I did see some official card art, and it got some really awesome card art, I think, in either TCG Pocket or one of the new expansions, which does make it look a lot better. And I did see someone who highlighted that if they just kept the hood down, Mega Feraligatr looks substantially better.
Mhm.
That being
Exactly.
said, Caps, I do want to highlight that I appreciate the fact that you like Glamora. That's actually one of my favorite Paldea Pokemon. And I did want to throw out there, if I remember correctly, Paldea isn't it so, like, don't they mention in Scarlet and Violet some connection to Kalos? Because I think I remember when we were talking about Scarlet and Violet on a cast, we were talking about how it's either regionally close to South Kalos or something else, and that we had actually theorized that maybe Mega Evolution was coming back because terrestrialization was close geography or geologically or something. And so I'm wondering if this is a continual nod to the connection between the two regions.
I would not be surprised if this is the case. I know we did talk about that, and obviously the regions are based on France and Spain, respectively, Callus and Paldea. So, and those two countries share a border IRL. So it's not unheard of that the two could have a greater connection that we have thought, and maybe uh Glamora is an example. Glamora getting a Mega is an example of the connection between those two regions. I mean, there are other Paldean Pokemon that received Megas. Tatsugiri for one. So like it's not unheard of, I feel. We did have a chat question that I think can segue well into some of the other questions, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask the panel, and maybe I'm speaking for you, Road, but is there any other things about the Pokemon themselves that we wanted to talk about / highlight before we get into like story and narrative?
I do
Mega
have
Golden. Sure.
thoughts. Um, yeah, I just thought it was really nice that we got all of these Gen 9 megas at all. It would have been really easy to just relegate it to a lot of those older Gen Pokemon, or even, up to like Gen 6. But the fact that we got like multiple Gen 9 megas in like Tatsugiri and Baxcalibur, Scoville and Glamora, I thought it was just really cool that they felt that they could have megas for those newer gen Pokemon right away. Because in back in X and Y, the only actual X and Y Pokemon that got a mega was Deancey. There was only Audino from Gen 5. And so it was like really weirdly limited. And so I think it's
If
nice
I
that
remember
they're
correctly,
going
both of those
back.
were introduced in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, so not even in XY.
That very well might be the case. I did not play those games at release, so I actually don't know. But I just thought it was nice that they're like, okay, we can actually incorporate these newer gen Pokemon into the Mega roster right away instead of arbitrarily limiting it. Like I think it's nice that they seem to be kind of gradually moving away from this kind of idea of older gen like priority when it comes to these forms, which I appreciate as someone who really likes a lot of the newer Pokemon in general.
Yeah, I just wanted to gush about Mega Golurk and how cool it looks. I really like how it has those flames flowing out like its seal is broken and now all the power is flowing out. I really like that. And but yeah, I also but I agree that letting your Pokemon enjoy the gimmick, yeah, that it's also something I like. I but I do have like this thing about the Z Megas. I generally like their designs, but I do kind of wonder, like, here in this game they play slightly differently to the regular megas. They don't last as long, and I do wonder how that's going to be incorporated, once we start using them in the more standard games, if at all. Like, anyone got any ideas? Like, will they have a time limit and the other megas won't? Or how are they gonna work? Because the difference between the C megas and the regular megas is highlighted so much. It makes it feel like they're like it should be it's something that's going to stay, but I'm not really sure what.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting how we only have 3 Z Megas. Like, it feels like such a limited roster for a mechanic that seems like has a lot of potential. So it makes me curious, like, how prevalent that'll be in future games. If they will introduce more like Z type mega evolutions or something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
initially was going to say that I don't think that they will appear in future games because I don't think that Mega Evolution is going to come back after Legends ZA. But then I remembered Pokemon Champions is coming out, so there's going to be probably some way for you to get your Legends ZA Megas into a more traditional battle format. And you'll be able to use them in mega battles in Pokemon Champions, presumably. So that's a good question. I mean, like, do they just not allow you to use Z Megas in like a typical turn-based Pokemon format, or like what do they do there? That's it's a big question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think honestly that since there are so few of them, that they might just, kind of in the traditional turn-based system that the Z megas are treated just like the X and Y megas, where there's the only difference is the name. There's not actually a mechanical difference. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I kind of hope not, because like looking at the C megas, like they kind of render the all of them belong to Pokemon that already have an extra mega, but it really feels like the C megas make the existing megas obsolete. Like I'm not sure what value Mega Garchomp with its reduced speed would have over Mega Garchomp C, which is like this speed demon with amazing with amazing offensive power. And same thing for Mega Lucario C, which is another speed demon with much higher special attack than regular Mega Lucario has attack. And yeah, and then there's Mega Absol C, which I adore the design of, but it really feels like it will leave regular Mega Absol in the dust, because it has the extra ghost typing, and it has much better attack and speed than the other ones. So like yeah, I do feel like if they just were like the regular megas do in regular gameplay, they're just gonna render them completely obsolete. And I'm not sure if that would if that would if I would like that. So if I would like that very much. But yeah, that's just me.
Well, I'm going to add in something really quickly, and then I think it's going to be worthwhile. I just want to say, like, I think the thing with the Z Megas, one, I think it'll be really interesting to see how cross-pollination with, like, champions and other things will work. But, I thought about this a lot with the Z Megas. I honestly, to a degree, feel like these Z Megas were kind of a retcon based on like a degree of like a retcon of like these are some really popular megas. Let's add something new into them. But I also think there's a really interesting thing that's happening with like I think Pokemon Champions is going to have every mechanic, like Z moves, all kinds of things in some way or another, if I remember correctly. And honestly, these megas are probably the thing that I am least worried about breaking the game. When it comes to, especially with, and I'm not going to get into this into a great deal, but many people who watch this cast know I'm a huge Alola fan. Alola's big problem was like a good chunk of its Z moves were essentially one hit KO, depending on how you had the Pokemon and thing. And I honestly wonder if these Z Megas are them also trying to balance before Pokemon Champions. Because if we have some of these insanely powerful moves, there's gonna be something that needs to help balance those a bit. Because I remember when Alola came out, like a big complaint was you can spam a fast Pokemon with powerful attack and kill something incredibly quickly. And going into that, talking in that, I just want to check before we move on into our story questions, because we have some really great story questions I just want to say, any last thoughts on this that can be said really quickly? Well, I'll move us on into our stories about our questions about stories, which I think this theme of how the story plays out is actually really important, because if you've played the DLC, you know there is a very important mega. But before we get into that, I do want to kind of modify a couple of my questions for the sake of time. And Hilbert, I know that you are really passionate about the DLC story in one way or another. And I'd like to know, how do you feel that the characters in this game compare to the main game? And also, what are your thoughts on the narrative and how they're utilized?
Right off the bat with this DLC, I really did appreciate extra Corbo screen time. He was my favorite character in the base game, so just having some more shenanigans with him and Philippe and the rest of the Rust Syndicate was a really welcome addition. And I think that's a pretty popular opinion. Despite that, and this kind of ties into like my opinions on the gameplay loop in general. It kind of molds my opinion of the narrative as well. Even though I got to see like a lot of my new favorite returning characters, I kind of felt like there were a lot of weak points in the narrative itself. Partially also because a lot of the gameplay was there's hyperspace distortions appearing, and you have to go do some research. And once you're done with that research, you report back to Corbeau, and you just repeat the cycle several times. And I feel like there wasn't, trying to find the right words. I feel like some of them were done a little bit dirty.
Yeah, I kind of get that. That, it made sense at first that, that, oh yeah, we've got this new thing and we need to, so we need to research it. But then it's like, that when you keep having to, oh, do more research, do more research, do more research, it's like at some point you just kind of go like, if have I not done enough? Um, and so it kind of starts to, feel less like, a genuine diegetic reason for doing this, and more just, it's feeling like padding out the runtime. But that being said, as far as the character interactions go, I thought they were really fun. I enjoyed how they, got to, found reasons to, pair up these, otherwise, you know, um, these partners that otherwise wouldn't interact. That, like Grisham is teaching Tarragon how to be a cook. That's cute. Um, our sisters in suffering, Laban and Gwen. That's funny. And so, so yeah, it's cute to see, the character writing in base CA was really good, and so, the DLC just kind of gave us more of that, and it's nice. But I am still salty that the only new character who returned in the DLC is Corina, because not the changing leader of Lumio City. I'm still I'm very mad that they didn't bring back Clement and Bonnie.
Yeah, just to add to that, I do think it's very weird. Like, there is an underlying thread of the main game DLC of like, oh, Clement and Bonnie are not in the tower. Oh, wait, this tower is a giant weapon. Why were they allowing children to basically live here? Um, and then there's no mention of them. I will say, I have no idea how I feel about Corina's outfit of like every megastone. And like I do appreciate the fact that, she has continued to grow more confident. And I gotta give, like, we've talked about the Rustin to get people, but I also want to highlight really quickly Ivor. I mean, that guy is just the biggest himbo, and he is so fun to read. Yes, he terrorizes his sister, and I feel really bad for her about that. But I feel like Ivor, especially in the DLC, even though he's not in it a ton, I feel like he's got real growth. And I feel like he's starting to figure out, hey, your sister's an adult. Don't have to like watch her 24 hours a day. Um, and he's getting better at boundaries, which I think is good. Um, but does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I think I wanted to add a little more on Ivor. He's also one of my favorite characters from the base game, and I do see that growth in the DLC, and it's always very welcome for him. But I think I also wanted to touch back on your comment about Arena and her Megastones, Miss Megastones in the flesh. I think it's kind of funny just how like unapologetically like ridiculous she puts herself out to be for being like for brandishing the title of Mega Evolution successor. Like it's just like pure, she takes it so seriously with so much heart that I think I can excuse the very ridiculous outfit. um I think it just adds a little comical relief to the situation in the DLC.
I can definitely see the value in that. I mean, I will say, just to carry on what you said a little bit there, Hilbert, um, I do wonder if like Karina had pressure to begin with, and I notice she shifts pretty significantly between when she's by herself and when she's in front of people. So I do wonder if that is like them paying, especially with their focus on like, I have to protect Lumios this time around. I wonder if it's like a duality of her masking a little bit to be over the top for the sake of the city kind of thing. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that as well.
Um, Going into this though, especially because of, throughout the story, there is the hints that Karina knows more than she's always admitting, or at least is taking upon this responsibility. And I think that moves really well into our discussion about the main villain of the story, and love it or hate it, and hopefully no spoilers for anybody listening. But it is Darkrai, a Pokemon I literally never would have thought had gotten a Mega. And my inner edgelord loves Mega Absol Z, and I absolutely, as unsettling as this thing is, I absolutely adore the Eldritch horror vibes of Darkrai. Um, and I just really wanted to quickly, because I know, yeah, I know that GD, you really wanted to share some thoughts on this, and please take it away.
Well, yeah, well, yeah. I just want to say that on one hand, I agree with you completely that the Eldritch horror vibe of Darkrai is freaking amazing. Like 10 out of 10 stars. I love it, and the design, like how it just looks like a Kirby villain. I love that too. Like really pushing the envelope. I only have one issue that I will say is very much a me problem, but I don't like that Cresselia has no part in any of this. I don't like that, like she's not even in the game at all. And Darkrai and Cresselia are supposed to be like a duo, but then here's Darkrai, getting a whole new form, and Cresselia not even in the game, and also got her stats nerfed in the transition from Gen 8 to Gen 9, and that I will admit that kind of bothers me a little because but that's I admit that that's a me problem. I like that when things like come in twos or threes and in groups, I want everybody in the group to be included in some way. I don't like someone to be left out. Yeah, like that's one thing that really bothered me when when in Generation 8 how Charizard was initially in the base game of Sword and Shield but not Venusaur or Blastoise. That bothered me a lot because I was like, they're the original starter trio. Why aren't all of them present there? And and I have a similar feeling regarding that. But yeah, I will admit that that's completely a me problem. It's not no, like it's not really something that probably not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. It's just like a me problem, but I needed to get that out of my chest.
Yeah, I don't really mind Darkrai getting a Mega and Cresselia not, because they've always well, they are a duo. There's always kind of been an element of asymmetry to their duality, if you will, because Cresselia is a legendary while Darkrai is a mythical. So Cresselia is so Cresselia has been available in a lot of games where Darkrai is not. So it feels fair for Darkrai to get to shine without Cresselia for once.
But it's not the first time though. Like remember the Darkrai got a whole movie and Cresselia didn't.
That's a movie, not a game.
But
And
still,
again, mythicals usually, historically, mythicals would be featured in movies, so that also tracks.
Yeah, I don't think I have an issue with I don't have a problem with how Darkrai was implemented. I think the mega design works if it's a little goofy. I think the manifestations of dreams and obviously Darkrai being that Pokemon, it makes a lot of sense for it to be included in this way. So I don't have an issue with the actual implementation, but it does feel like just such a missed opportunity for it to be something more interesting. I kind of feel like this was a good opportunity to even potentially introduce a fully new legendary, just to or even I almost was imagining instead of Hoopa Unbound being this random post game mission that doesn't really have any weight, if it's a different Hoopa that's going rogue and doing all this stuff, it just felt like while Darkrai worked, it felt like there were other options that I think would have been a lot more interesting and felt closer to Kalos and Lumios as a region. Darkrai just randomly showing up here and Heatran, why are all these Gen 4 Mons randomly showing up, especially after they got all this spotlight in Arceus and the Diamond and Pearl remakes? Spend some more time really highlighting the Gen 6 Mons or doing something more unique. It just was a little weird to me. It felt like a lot of potential that they didn't follow through on.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I was fully, up until they mentioned the name of the Bad Dreams crawler, I'm like, oh, Bad Dreams, that's Darkrai. Up until that point, I was fully expecting the final boss to be Hoopa Unbound.
I would also just like to say I wish that there was more of an opportunity for some more of those environments like we see in the final like Darkrai sequence, or like post game with like the weather trio. Like I think it was really cool. Like, oh, it's all these dreams, and you're telling me that like none of the dreams it's harvesting take place anywhere outside of Lumiose City. Like, where are the dreams from like other spots in this region or like anything like that? Like, I think it could have been, if you're going to say like, oh, it's all the manifestations of dreams, that feels especially hollow when it's so repetitive in the environments that are being conjured.
Oh, and Abby, thank you for that amazing segue to a question I just think will go really well with this. And Abby, I'd actually, if you're comfortable, I'd love to start with you. Do you feel like at all that the ethereal vibe of hyperspace Lumiose sets itself well to Lumiose? And do you think it is a good way to explore a different dimension or side of Lumiose?
I actually think it being dreams kind of undermines it, because at first it's like, okay, it's these like hyperspace holes, and we're just seeing like a kind of a dark world, if you will, to borrow like the Zelda terminology, of Lumiose. And it's just like this inverted sort of scenario, and all of that. And I think that would have made a lot of sense. And that also would have lent more to like Hoopa Unbound being the primary villain. But then once it was confirmed that they were specifically doing dreams, then it like I was saying, like it really felt like a missed opportunity not to have more interesting, or like zany environments. Like I find it hard to believe that anyone's dreams would just be this same section of the city and some, I mean, yes, maybe some non-regional Pokemon, but just like having dreams be this big thing and then having everything be so uninteresting and flat, like really felt like a juxtaposition that I was not a huge fan of.
Does anyone else have any opinions on this kind of vibe of hyperspace Lumiose and how it connects to Lumiose itself?
Yeah, I fully agree with Abby that, that the explanation being that it's these hyperspace pockets are created by dreams makes it really lame that then, the places you explore are just, places in Lumiose. Like, this would have been the perfect opportunity to, if they don't want to, if they don't, they're not, obviously they're not remaking, the entirety of Kalos in a fully, open world environment, but it would have been really cool if each hyperspace pocket was, a was just a, a pocket of just a little area of somewhere within Kalos that that that, if you're not familiar with XY, that, okay, it's just, some random place. But if you are, that, that you would recognize it and be like, whoa, that this is the place that I've been before. Because like during the main story, I thought it was really cool the way that, stuff like Hotel Richisme and, Lysander Labs, that, they kind of reimagined these areas that were from the original games. And I would have loved to see more of that with, just like they don't the the premise for Hyperspace Lumiose gives a perfect reason for, not having to make everything, seamless, but that, instead of, the small hyperspace pocket being, that random little park, maybe that hyperspace pocket is, the little skating park that's on Route 6. Um or, that, the maybe one pocket could be, that route with all the fallen leaves on it. That's really pretty. Um and like, yeah, and because like something that I noticed while I was exploring Darkride's world was that um it was that as much as I enjoyed exploring Lumio City, I did kind of start to miss after a while the ability to explore these landscapes that are a little more natural looking. And so it would have been a nice change of pace to have the hyperspace pockets be a little more, more natural environments rather than, just the same boring old urban space that you're used to.
I would also say I feel like it was a really big missed opportunity, even if they were going to do all these like, oh, we're just in Lumios for the base thing, or and like, oh, we had these really cool things with like the caverns for like the weather trio and like not spirit but whatever. I cannot remember where Rayquaza is.
Sky Village.
But yes, I think it was a real missed opportunity that the Darkrai environment, as far as I can tell, wasn't based on anything, any actual location. Like they
Oh
could
no,
have at
it's based
least
on
done
it's
that,
based
I
on
feel
New
like.
Moon Island.
Yeah, it's New Moon Island.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That I stand corrected then. I did not like I guess I didn't recognize it, but I also am not familiar with the original environment. So ignore that actually. I I stand corrected.
Yeah, that's why it's called the Hyperspace New Moon Nightmare. It's a nod to New Moon Island.
Oh, first of all, I am loving the conversation we're having tonight, but I was actually thinking about everything that had been shared, and it's given me a lot of things, a lot of ideas. And so this wasn't originally something I was going to ask tonight, but especially based on the Paldea or the Scarlet and Violet DLC, we got several, at least in my opinion, unexpected DLC releases. And especially with the fact that Pokopia is happening not too long from now, but we haven't gotten any, well, I'm going to say credible, just for the sake of not being rude to the Lakes community, but at the same time not highlighting something I shouldn't. Um, Despite that, we've gotten this unexpected DLC in the past, and it does feel like this was kind of an abrupt end, in my opinion, to this DLC. Are we expecting at all more DLC to come out? Are we thinking it's going to highlight other megas? Do we think there's going to be more Z megas? What can we expect, and does anyone think this is actually going to happen?
I don't. I think it would be. I think it would be odd. I think they really want to put their resources into the next games and whatever's coming after. And then, especially, one thing that I don't think was brought up, but I think definitely affected the development of some of the recent things is they've siphoned off a decent chunk of their team for Beast of Reincarnation, their non-Pokemon action game that's releasing this year. So I think a lot of resources have also been diverted to that. So it'd be strange for me to foresee a world where they're spending more time on this game as opposed to that project and then the upcoming like fully new releases.
Yeah, can I jump in here as kind of a segue off of that? I actually saw that Game Freak at least where I read it from, Game Freak outsourced a lot of the development for Beasts of Reincarnation to other companies. They only had a relatively small portion of their team working on it, but it's still notable that they are doing something that's not Pokemon that will siphon resources away from Pokemon. Um, so I think that Abby, your point still stands. I think it's unlikely, in my opinion, that we'll get new DLC in this game. And I think the other thing to note is that even if the gameplay, we have our issues with the gameplay loop. You know, some of us find it fun, some of us find it a little bit tedious. That being said, there is a lot of content in this game, in the DLC in particular. I mean, you can find so many legendaries, so many, new megas. Like, it's a sizable amount of content. Despite the kind of annoying gameplay loop to get that content. making it feel like it's not as sizable as it actually is. So even though it's possible that maybe they will drop some sort of like unexpected free patch or a Mega Dimension 2 starring Volcanion or whatnot. But it's possible. I do think it's a little unlikely though, just based on what you said, Abby, as well as the fact that we do have a lot of content in this DLC.
Yeah. Caps, thanks for jumping in. I think that's a very valid point. I will admit, I literally just found out about Beast of Reincarnation, and when I saw it, I was on Facebook and I was like, "Oh, is this Facebook lying to me again, or is this actually happening?" So it's good to know it's happening. I mean, oh my gosh, what was the last non-Pokemon game Game Freak did? Wasn't it that
Little Town
music-based
Hero.
one?
No,
Yeah.
it was Little Town Hero, and before it was Pocket Card Jockey was the other one they did.
And I think it's really cool that they're doing that actually. But moving us, I mean, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that. But and I know that we have a lot of different ideas and things that we can highlight, but I did want to throw out one last question there, which is in general, and I think this is a good question to ask. Do you think that DLC, and this can go out to anyone, I'd love to kind of have a round robin or however we want to approach this. Do you think that these DLCs benefit the stories and benefit players, or do they prevent people from getting the full experience and fully embracing a game that many might say should be one consistent work?
I mean, it's hard
I
to
guess I'll
say.
or
It's hard to say how much. I mean, ideally, it would be nice if if just all of this content was in the base game from the start. Um, but but it's like then that would come at the cost of development time and the cost cutting, and that could make the quality worse. And so it's like it's hard to say exactly how much the content of the DLC will like how much is how like how much it's impacted by being able to be sold as a separate package as opposed to being part of the base game. um and because I will say that generally I've been like enjoying the DLCs. As far as one of my favorite things about Pokemon is, ironically, the human characters, and the and a lot of the DLCs have been taking good big strides to develop the human characters a little more. Like with Sword and Shield had the Galarian Star tournament, which fleshed out the relationships between those characters, and Scarlet and Violet had the League Club interactions where you could have different characters talking to each other, um, and the by comparison, the Mega Dimension DLC does a little less of that, but you still get some stuff about developing some of the relationships a little bit more. And so if and so I really like that stuff, and if that can only happen because it's DLC, then I am fully in support of continuing the DLC model.
yeah, I I'm I have an opinion here that I don't know if people will necessarily agree with this. I sort of feel like if this DLC was included in the base game, it actually would have detracted from the base game for me. I because I really liked the base game, and then towards the end it also got a little grindy with all of the infinite royale matches and all of that. And then so immediately being expected to also do all of this grinding for the DLC, because it would have been, available right away. I think it would have really burnt me out of the game, and I think it would have kind of soured the experience for me. So, in some sense, just having like the mandatory like month or 2 month break between playing the base game and having access to this DLC, I think kind of refreshed me. I was like, okay, I've taken this time off. I'm ready to get back into this game. And so the fact that it was a little more on the grindy side didn't necessarily bother me. So I think in that sense, I like that it's DLC instead of being included. But it's also hard to say that like having more content in the base game is necessarily a bad thing. So there's two sides to it. But I also just think it's nice that they actually went out of their way to provide DLC for this game, because we really thought we were going to see that with Legends Arceus, and then we didn't end up getting it. We got like the free updates that did the like whatever the like dream battles or whatever it was. So I think like it was nice that they gave us DLC for this and aren't just limiting it to the like main like the flagship entries for each generation. But it's also, yeah, if it had just been added as like in the base game, that would have been nice just from like a cost perspective. But like I said, I think it actually would have detracted from the original package for me.
Yeah, and I think like my whole deal with like DLCs is it's really important like how it's implemented with respect to the base game and like when it gets implemented. So I do agree with you. It's like this definitely feels like it benefits as a DLC. And I personally thought like the narrative itself wasn't such a strong follow-up to the main story. So yeah, again, like it was kind of good that it was optional. I tend to look at the Scarlet and Violet DLC implementation as like a pretty ideal way of doing it, with respect to the base game of Scarlet and Violet, because you had so many different storylines going on at once, and the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc were another set of stories that were connected between themselves that you could start at basically any point in the game. So you could choose to have it done during your first playthrough, a second playthrough, or after you complete any of those. And then it was kind of nice that you had it all tied up at the end with the Mochi Mayhem event, if you so chose to do that. So I think that there's definitely a science to the way that DLCs can be effective. And Mega Dimension, I think, did the right call being DLC, but personally it didn't really enrich the experience much more than what it offered for me.
DD, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, yeah. I feel, I kind of just feel like everyone has already said pretty much everything I wanted to say. So I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what I can add anymore. Yeah.
I think that's completely valid. Everything has been beautifully said. Caps, do we have one last chat question in the Twitch chat?
We do not currently at the moment. So if anybody wants to ask something in chat, now is your chance. I'll take the first one that is put in the chat. But I will go ahead and add my response as I wait for the chat question to come in, if it does, to this question, which was, how do you feel about the DLC model? Do you think that it's taking away from, people experiencing a full story? And I think in this situation, no. I do not think that this was necessarily taking away from the full story. I think if you didn't buy this DLC and you just played Pokemon Legends ZA, the base game, you still got a, well executed, well told story that explored themes of, loss and I don't know what else they explore. That's the main one I got, was loss and like moving on from the past and stuff like that. But like regardless, I think in comparison to Scarlet and Violet, you really didn't get I think there were definitely some plot holes in Scarlet and Violet. And that's not to say that there aren't plot holes in this game. I mean it's brought up, like Storm brought up earlier, like what happened to Clement and Bonnie? Like who knows, right? But I do think that they specifically chose to acknowledge certain plot points, and they specifically chose to disregard others. And by acknowledging the plot points that they did in the main game, I don't really think it's a bad thing that they didn't kind of touch on every loose end in X and Y. It leaves room for the player to kind of interpret on their own what has happened to your favorite character, right? But for the things that it did seek to do, I think it did it well. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, I feel like there was a lot of questions left unanswered after the end game with Area Zero, that and terrestrialization as a whole, that then get fleshed out further in the DLC there. So in order to really experience the full Scarlet and Violet story, in my opinion, you do need to kind of play the DLC, and you do need to go and experience, what happened with Terrapagos and all the connections there. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Is like, compared to Scarlet and Violet, I do think that this game had, I support the DLC model here, because I think that if you don't buy it, you're not necessarily missing out on something that's, integral to the themes and story of the base game. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah,
And I will say, I'm gonna focus in, especially if we don't have any questions really quickly. I just want to highlight, I think all of the opinions that have been shared on the DLC and everything make a traditional, like not traditional, a momentous amount of sense, right? There has been so many opinions. We had a lot of back and forth. I will say, I do agree with everything that has been shared. I do think also, and I just want to say, this was a very unique kind of DLC. And I think that I will say the DLC, I think, does allow, as stated already, that it does allow for a unique form of storytelling. And yes, it can cost more, but I think, especially within Pokemon, more diverse storytelling um, is important. And I just also want to ask if anyone else has any other things you want to share before we begin to wrap up here.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna comment that the only thing that you will miss out on, if you don't get the DLC, is of course the new batch of megas, which probably sucks a lot if there's a certain mega design there that you really like but can't get because you can't get the DLC. So yeah, kind of like the same problem with how the Halo starter megas are obtained.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I will say, I think the beautiful thing about the DLC is it is available over time, and it is something that can be earned. And I should highlight that the eShop does have the points reward system. Granted, you have to spend a good chunk in order to make that happen, but I will make it sustainable and have enough money to pay off a good chunk of the costs. But that being said, I want to highlight this has been just a beautiful conversation that has had a lot of depth. And while there is so much for the DLC to be played, I do encourage those of you listening, those of you who want to experience it, if you can afford it, I highly recommend it. But I'm going to have us begin the wrap up just out of respect for the audience and our members of our cast. I'm going to go through everybody before I say my farewell. But I'm going to start with Abby, and I just want to ask, compared to Legends Arceus and compared to past DLC, where do you think this game, how do you think it compares? Which do you prefer more, Legends Arceus or Legends ZA? And do you think this DLC was worth it? And I'm going to ask you to do something very difficult, but I know everybody can do this. Can you answer that in a minute or less?
Yeah, I do still ultimately prefer this game over Legends Arceus. I just think the gameplay loop is a lot more interesting to me. I do think the DLC, like I said, actually detracts from the experience ultimately, which is not really what a DLC should do. So in that sense, I think it's probably the weakest of the three sets of mainline game DLC we've gotten. But it still was pleasant for enough for the time that I spent with it. I just think that there are some odd decisions made that could have been pretty easily remedied to make it a lot more interesting and have it stand up more to future playing.
And can you let us know who you are, what you do one last time, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm Abby. I am again one of the moderators over on our Discord and one of the streamers here. Really, those are the spots to find me. I if you feel like digging, I'm elsewhere, but it's not something that I feel the need to share. So yeah, the Discord or here on the Twitch channel are where I can be found.
So, and then same thing, GD, can you compare Legends Arceus and Legends ZA, which you prefer more? And do you think this DLC was worth it in a minute or less? And can you let everybody know one last time after that who you are, what you do, and where people can find you?
Well, it might admittedly be recency bias, but I think I did enjoy Legend CA more than Legends Arceus. I mean, although I do think I do like Legends Arceus's atmosphere better, but that's mainly because I'm a sucker for old ancient times things. But but for gameplay, gameplay and gameplay and story and characters. I think I did prefer ZA. Um, what else sorry, what
Who
else?
you are. So who you are, what you do, and where people can find you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm Ghost Diplocaulus over on Bulbagarden. I am a super moderator there. And where you can find me? Well, obviously there at Bulbagarden. I also have a Twitter. Yeah, yeah, and a DeviantArt and Tumblr. I will admit I don't really post very often, but yeah, that's where I am. Usually I go by the handle of Butterflygon, but but yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. And then same questions, Hilbert. Uh, which do you prefer, Arceus or Legends ZA? And do you think this DLC was worth its price tag? And then I'll repeat this if needed, but where can people find you? What do you do on Bulbagarden? And who you are?
That's a very soul-wrenching question because I really did enjoy Legends Arceus and Legends ZA, but recency bias has taken over. I think I do enjoy ZA's gameplay a little bit more than Arceus. Um, that kind of goes for both the base game and the DLC content. I think it was kind of funny that the free update for Arceus also had a whole lot of grinding, but with respect to outbreaks. But I think I would prefer the hyperspace stuff over that. As for where I am, I can be. I'm FolksCallMeHilbert, or just Hilbert for short. I can be found on Bulbapedia or on Discord. I've been taking a little bit of a break the past couple months, but I can still be contacted and I can get back to you at any time.
And then Storm, same questions. Which do you prefer, Legends ZA or Arceus? Was the DLC worth it? And who you are, what you do, and where people can find you.
I think I'm gonna be the odd one out here and say that I preferred Legends Arceus. Um, Mostly because I prefer the turn-based combat to real time, and I also really enjoy the I enjoy catching Pokemon, as I've mentioned a couple times already. And Arceus is very much more catching focused than ZA. So um, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I do enjoy Legends ZA, but I think if I had to pick one, then I would go. I would pick Legends Arceus. And where you can find me, I am on you can find me on Bulbapedia, or on the Bulbagarden Discord server, Storm Aurora. And yeah, just I say hi, I don't bite.
Well, thank you, everybody, one last time. And thank you for those listening, whether you're listening live on Twitch or listening to our port over on YouTube. I am the humble host of this Bulbacast, Rhodehawk. With me, you can find me every time on this Bulbacast, but you can also find YouTube shorts on the Bulbagarden YouTube channel of me doing summons and occasionally going insane on Pokemon Masters EX. With that, though, I do want to thank everybody one last time. This has been truly a great discussion. Whether or not we get more DLC, I am excited for the future of Pokemon, and whatever the Pokemon Company does with its new games or otherwise, I think this is a great time to be a fan. And Caps, I will pass it to you.
Yeah. Oh, realized I was muting the call. Hey, yeah, thank you so much, Road, and thanks to Storm, Abby, GD, and Hilbert for jumping on Bulbacast. It's been a really fun discussion. I think y'all have made some really good points, and I've enjoyed listening in to you guys and chiming in where necessary. I just wanted to quickly shout out a couple of Twitch related things while I have the Twitch audience here. Just some updates to streams and stuff. Tomorrow's Mystery Dungeon Mornings probably going to be canceled. Be sure to check the Discord for up to date details about that. And Dawning should still be streaming tomorrow night, so be sure to tune in for that. That will probably be our next stream. But yeah, thank you guys very much for listening to Bulbacast. I'm gonna raid you out over to my friend Web of Words. He's currently playing Helldivers, but he does do a lot of Pokemon stuff too, so be sure to go check his stuff out and give him a follow. And say hi from Bulbagarden if you so desire. But yeah, I'll send you guys over there. Thank you so much, chat, for engaging with us and hanging out with us. Been a blast. Enjoy the raid, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.